You've been trained to care. From a young age, you were told to be liked, to be polite, to be accepted. You were taught that how others see you somehow defines who you are. But what they didn't teach you is that caring too much about what others think is the quickest way to lose yourself. A modern Stoic knows this. He understands that the opinions of others are noise, sometimes flattering, often misleading, always temporary. When you live for approval, you hand over control. You allow strangers, critics, even people who don't respect you to shape your identity. You adjust your truth so it fits into their comfort zones. You silence your voice so theirs feels louder. And over time, you stop recognizing the man in the mirror, because he's built from fragments of other people's expectations. That's not clarity. That's a slow erosion. But there's another way. The Stoic way. You can reclaim your center. You can detach from validation without becoming bitter. You can live aligned with your values instead of chasing the ever-shifting moods of others. The first step? Understanding that their opinion isn't reality, and it's never been. What they think of you is filtered through their insecurities, their projections, their fears. You don't need to correct them. You need to outgrow the need to be understood by them. The man who is free from the need to be liked becomes dangerous, not because he seeks conflict, but because he's no longer controlled by avoidance. When you stop caring what others think, you stop diluting your truth. You speak less, but when you do, it's clean, sharp, and intentional. You walk into rooms not to impress, but to observe. You stop asking, "Do they like me?" and start asking, "Do I even respect this space?" This shift doesn't happen overnight. It begins the moment you realize approval is addicting, and like any addiction, it leaves you empty. The more you chase being liked, the more you abandon what makes you solid. Your tone changes, your posture weakens. You hesitate when you should move, you second-guess when you should decide. And all for what? A nod? A comment? A fragile kind of safety that never truly lasts? Stoicism reminds us that opinions are neither good nor bad. They're neutral until we give them weight. You decide whether someone's words enter your mind or pass through unnoticed. That's your power. And here's what most people won't admit. When you stop reacting to judgment, people stop throwing it. Your silence disarms their need to control you. Your indifference becomes a mirror, reflecting their insecurity back at them. And once you've tasted that freedom, real freedom, of not needing to be liked, you'll never want to go back. When you stop caring what others think, you begin to move with precision. You no longer ask for permission to be who you are. You stop shrinking in rooms that can't handle your presence. You walk out of conversations that disrespect your standards, and you do it quietly, without apology. Because you've come to understand that the version of you they're reacting to is usually just a projection of themselves. Their opinion isn't about you. It never was. It's about their lens, and you're done bending to it. Most people live in a cage made of invisible bars, fear of judgment, fear of rejection, fear of not fitting in. But the Stoic man, he breaks that cage every morning. He doesn't escape to be rebellious. He escapes to be aligned. Alignment is the real flex. You don't need loud outfits, empty words, or forced smiles. You walk in truth. And truth doesn't shout. It doesn't chase. It doesn't compromise to be digestible. It just is. This indifference isn't apathy. It's mastery. You're not numb to life. You've simply stopped negotiating your peace. You don't need to change minds, win debates, or be the hero in someone else's story. You lead your own. That's the power of detachment. It doesn't make you cold, it makes you clear. You become someone who is no longer moved by every wave of opinion because you've finally dropped anchor inside yourself. If you're done living for other people's approval, subscribe and hit the bell, not to be seen, but to stay centered. The more you detach from public opinion, the more you begin to hear your own voice, not the one shaped by fear, but the one shaped by truth. You start choosing differently. You stop showing up to be liked and start showing up to be aligned. You don't enter spaces wondering how to fit in. You enter knowing who you are. And if the room doesn't recognize that, you don't shrink, you leave. That's the new standard, and once you raise that bar, everything below it becomes unbearable. You begin to realize how much of your stress came from trying to manage perception, editing yourself, censoring your thoughts, curving your tone just to avoid friction. But what does that build? Nothing real, nothing stable, nothing grounded. The Stoic doesn't fear friction, he embraces it, because he knows that discomfort is often just a sign of clarity. And clarity will always feel threatening to those who live in noise. This is the silent rebellion of a Stoic life. You're not trying to be edgy or impressive. You're trying to be whole, quietly, without ceremony, without performance. You're building a mindset that doesn't rely on applause to feel solid. A way of walking through the world that doesn't change with trends, opinions, or criticism. You become stable, not by controlling what people say, but by mastering how little it matters. Freedom doesn't come when people approve of who you are. It comes when their approval no longer defines you. That's where the Stoic lives, in that space between external noise and internal stillness. When someone compliments you, you say thank you, but you don't inhale it like oxygen. When someone criticizes you, you listen, but you don't bleed for it. You move from a place of grounded neutrality, not because you're indifferent to truth, but because you've trained yourself to filter noise from value. And here's what changes. Your actions become cleaner. You stop overthinking every step. You stop performing. You stop needing validation before every decision. You trust your gut. You build from instinct, sharpened by principle. The man who's free from judgment isn't reckless. He's responsible. He knows the weight of his choices, but he makes them for himself. Not to be seen, not to be safe, not to be liked. And people start to notice. They may not say it, but they feel it. That shift in energy. You walk different, speak different. You're not defensive anymore. You're not easily moved. You're not chasing attention because presence is enough. And that presence? It's built, refined, and protected every time you resist the urge to care what they think. Because you finally understand. Most people don't even know what they think. They just repeat what's loud. Indifference isn't coldness. It's clarity. When you stop being consumed by how others see you, you start seeing everything else with sharper eyes. Your decisions become simpler. Your boundaries become cleaner. You no longer seek peace. You protect it. You no longer seek attention. You control it. The man who's no longer moved by approval becomes impossible to manipulate. He becomes stable in a world addicted to instability. And that stability? That's what makes him magnetic. You begin to attract differently, not because you're louder, but because you're solid. People sense that you can't be pulled, pressured, or swayed, and that silence, that refusal to perform, becomes your signature. You don't defend your path, you walk it. You don't explain your discipline, you embody it. And those who get it, get it. Those who don't, they were never meant to walk with you anyway. The Stoic knows, not needing to be understood is freedom. Not chasing validation is strength. Not reacting to every voice is power. You no longer serve the crowd, you serve your code. And when you move like that, with stillness, clarity, and unshakable direction, people may not always agree with you, but they will always feel you. So now ask yourself, If you stopped needing to be liked, who would you finally have the courage to